Okay. Hello. The two chapters this week were called Independence and New Nations. So, um, the Independence chapter just covered the process of Latin America becoming independent from Spain and all the controversies with that. Um, there was a lot of debate on what, like, how Latin America should be ran outside of Spanish rule because there was a lot of different cultures and communities that didn't really agree on the same thing. A lot of people didn't really want it to be like a centralized rule. A lot of people didn't want um, it to be too democratic. So there was a lot of um, controversies with that. And one of the news articles I read was called Brazil Cattle Processing Hitting New Records as China Devours More Beef. And I thought that was interesting because apparently, right now, Brazil is producing more beef than the United States. And I find that very interesting because the United States produces a lot of animal products. Um, so And I noticed that Latin America has always been a big producer for a lot of the world. A lot of European countries have been fighting over trade routes to Latin America for a long time. And you know, that was like kind of the beginning of Europe discovering the new world was through trade routes. So Europe's always been kind of wanting things from Latin America. Um, a lot of like sugar and wood and tobacco and chocolate and lots of like rich materials too. So like Spain and Britain have been fighting over the trade routes to Latin America forever, and that made it very complicated for Latin America to try and be independent from Europe because while they were trying to figure out how their governments should be ran, at the same time, there were these more established countries trying to buy product from them. So there was like, it became very complicated, especially in the New Nations chapter when they started finally becoming independent. There was still a lot of civil issues and then outside issues, and then Latin America saw that the United States had become independent from Britain, and they knew that they could become independent from Spain as well if the United States could do that. But there was still a lot of people that wanted to be under the king's rule because it gave some sort of structure, which I guess makes sense because the other option was like self governing, and that didn't really work out either. So, yeah, I mean, they didn't even know when these countries decided, when they called independence, they didn't even know like where the borders ended and started for their own countries, which caused a lot of conflict. Um, there was no like set culture yet. It was still very chaotic. Um, and even towards modern times, like I think in the textbook it said that Mexico, they had a constitution that ran until 1917. So even then, they're still actively changing their constitution. They're still actively trying to figure out their identity as a country. Um, and even with all that, like the indigenous people are still trying to protect themselves. So even though they're independent now, there's still a lot going on to try and organize themselves, which if you look at all the history, it like kind of makes sense why they're still struggling because they literally had to they've literally been trying to figure it out for centuries. So, yeah.